Travel back to 2000. It was the turn of the millennium, the time of the Y2K fears, but also today's subject's focus. It was a time in the middle of the success story of one real-time strategy game, Starcraft. The original Starcraft was already successful. It was the anomaly that launched the idea of esports, a global internet phenomenon. But even in its single-player mode, which was at the time was the main focus of RTS games, it was the first one that told a single continuous story from multiple perspectives, other than standalone stories where at the end your chosen faction always wins. Then came its expansion, Brood Wars, and elevated the game a lot more with new units, more balanced multiplayer, and of course, a continuation of the story, considered to be one of Blizzard's best stories ever told. Until the coming of Arthas in Warcraft 3, of course. But at this year of 2000, Warcraft 3 was still ways off. Still getting out of that really awkward early stage when it was supposed to be a game where you only controlled heroes and it had like 6 factions to choose from, and that version eventually actually evolved into World of Warcraft. Players would wonder if Starcraft would maybe get a second expansion to continue the story as Brood Wars ended in an uncertain way. And if you lived in any other country of the world, you know that there would be nothing until the trilogy of Starcraft 2. But to a small country in the middle of Europe, there was another forgotten trilogy of Starcraft, as there was an actual second expansion made by fans, with an ambition of it becoming official. That was Huncraft Genocide. Ah yeah, Starcraft. Played it when it came out, back in 1998. Despite it becoming such a big online phenomenon, my old self couldn't really care about that. The internet was that out there expensive thing that only Western rich people had access to. For me, as a kid, like everyone around me, it was all about just playing the campaign, not fully understanding what was going on due to very limited English knowledge, and in general just having fun with it, like with cheats and whatnot. I realized that there was an overarching story, of course, and it was one of the many games that actually helped me learning English. But there is still that memory of the old innocent times when we didn't care about esports and balance and meta, not even caring about stroking or EPing, about being able to beat a game on hardest difficulty. Just like with many old shooters, we kids shared cheat codes and tips and tricks between us, like Doom's idé Kudé, idé KFA, or Duke 3D's DN Cross and DN Stuff. Starcraft's power overwhelming Operation Sowal, show me the money, stuck in my head forever. This didn't stop me from really enjoying Starcraft. There was the music, the sounds, the voices, and the amazing CG cutscenes at the time have ignited my imagination beyond all reason. The rugged and cowboyish terrain with their definitely sci-fi and yet rustic buildings and units as if they would fall apart any moment. And that awesome rocking music, of course. Then the Zerg that felt like actually controlling the alien from, well, the alien movies. And I was always fascinated with creatures and metamorphose into something else. And of course, my forever favorite, the Protoss. I just love their design, the sleek golden buildings and spaceship, all the crystals and energy, their mystical music. It's peak higher alien civilization for me. So, when I opened an issue of the local GameStar magazine, which I had a subscription for at the time, and I seen an interview about Huncraft, I was so hyped. A new expansion? The devs wanting to make a deal with Blizzard to have it officially distributed? All of it is in Hungarian and also coming with a full Hungarian translation with voice acting of the main Starcraft and Brood Wars expansion, so I can finally understand the story. It was like a dream come true to a kid like me. Not to mention production values unheard of before, as voice acting anything independent made project was not something widespread at the time. Of course, the deal with Blizzard didn't go through, but they did allow Huncraft Interactive to freely distribute the expansion. Of course, when I look at it today, it does paint a bit more of an amateurish picture with several mistakes. Just looking at the loading screen, what happened with the poor Mutalisk? You just look at the in-game sprite, we can very clearly see that the head and the eyes are on the top, and the end of the body is the hole that shoots its projectiles. But the Huncraft render seems to think that the hole is the head. There is nothing really down there. It's like they rotated the poor thing upside down. Of course, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Because when it comes to Huncraft, trying to run it today is the first hurdle to get through. If you thought your Battle.net version or your remastered version would work, think again. While I heard that it might work on the latest patch of the classic version, the Huncraft executables are still version 1.09, so the safest is to install that version. Fortunately, when Starcraft Remastered came out, Blizzard actually made the original game freely available, so you can get it through a nifty launcher that also just allows you to install any version. Very nice. But for Huncraft, this is not enough. In the latest versions, Blizzard has removed the need for the game CDs. After all, who still got a CD drive in the PCs anymore, right? But again, Huncraft is 1.09, so it requires at least a Brood War CD. There are ways to make it, but yeah. Originally, Huncraft also needed this installer files burned on another disk, all official-like and everything. In fact, when trying to launch the game without the Brood War disk, the game actually says it needs the Huncraft disk in the drive. But actually the Brood War disk is just enough, fortunately. So when you are done with all this, the game launches, and if you are not from Hungary, you probably won't understand a thing. Fortunately, there is an English language patch. It's only the text, but that's more than enough. The only problem with it that it's only for the initial version of Huncraft, not its patched version. Also only really works for the default game, as Huncraft did come with an easy mode for its campaign, available through this other executable, which is not patched by the English patch. No, the patch also got some peculiarities when it comes to the translation, but I will talk about that later within context. First thing first, the new intro cutscene. While today it might look a bit amateurish and animation super stiff, especially the scene with the people talking, back then seeing fans make something that at least gets somewhat close to the quality of the original cutscenes was incredible. It takes a similar vibe to the Brood Wars intro, going for atmosphere and a feeling of isolation of a lone marine trying to flee from a base being overrun by Zerg. Of course it also got the weird flip mutalist, and you can hear sounds that belong to Protoss when they aren't around at all. Otherwise, the intro cutscene is really nice, pretty nice, nonetheless. Alright, so here we are. Time to look at the meat of the expansion. There are 3 campaigns as it goes, and it follows the order changes introduced in Brood Wars. In basic Starcraft, you started with the Terran episode, then the Zerg, and the Protoss. In Brood Wars, you started with Protoss, then Terran, and then the Zerg. So continuing the story, Huncraft starts with the Zerg, then Protoss, and then Terran, coming full circle. At the end of the Brood Wars, Kerrigan, the new bitch queen of the entire galaxy, reigns supreme in the Koprulu sector. Then, according to Starcraft 2, she gets depressed and nihilistic and doesn't do shit for 4 years, resetting the sector to a status quo, perfect for a more accessible sequel. And also promptly forgetting the existence of the Brood Wars story until like Heart of the Swarm with story parts based on a random bonus mission in the Nintendo 64 version of Starcraft. Huncraft, however, continues the story right there and then. Kerrigan defeated the combined forces of the UED, Terran Dominion, and the Shakuras Protoss. She now wants to get Shakuras to wipe out the Protoss once and for all, for some reason. And then spends half the campaign fighting against the remains of the UED that wasn't really dead just yet. Kerrigan creates a pair of cerebrates to help with that, One of them is the player who quickly finds out that Huncraft's campaigns are designed for people who have already beat the original game and Brood Wars. So imagine starting with a multi-phase mission that ends with a timed defense against fleets of battle cruisers. Yeah. No wonder there is a separate easy version of the campaign, which I of course couldn't play due to wanting to show you the game with English subtitles. Yay me.
On my way.
Mission 5, where you meet the first new unit of Huncraft. For the Zerg, the Scantalisk, an anti-air unit. I kinda see the inspiration behind it. We had an all-rounder unit like the Mutalisk, which evolved to the anti-ground specialist Guardian in SC1, and the anti-air specialist Devourer in Brood Wars. Brood Wars added an anti-ground specialist, the Lurker evolution, to the other all-rounder unit, the Hydralisk. So an anti-air specialist evolution to it makes perfect sense. However, I kinda wish it was more than just a sport colony with legs. The Lurker isn't just a sunken colony with legs after all. Won't have that until Starcraft 2 Heart of the Swarm. But a variation of the same idea. Maybe if the Scantalisk needed to borrow 2 to attack, and it attacked with like small spores shot in the same spread pattern as a Valkyrie's missiles, it would feel a bit more unique. The unit is effective against air units, and you definitely need to use them in this mission to defend against all this. I just wished it was a bit more unique of a new unit. By the way, this mission also unlocks the secret mission of Huncraft if you manage to sneak past all the other battlecruisers and bases and destroy the hero battlecruiser before the attack begins. Secret mission doesn't set up an entire sequel like the one in Brood Wars, but it's a cool commando mission with some interesting ideas that make it feel unique. It is in a later Zerg mission, when the UED have been finally dealt with once again, and you are hunting Protoss when you encounter the new Protoss unit, first as an enemy, the Protoss Psi Templar. The translation says it's a Psi Priest instead. Yeah, this is one of the peculiarities of the English translation. In many parts it translates stuff a bit too accurately. At other parts it embellishes with extra information that actually tries to fix the fact that Huncraft's story is very much void of small lore details that would anchor it in the same game world as the original titles. For one, Huncraft never mentions that it takes place in the Coprolus sector, which the English translation fixes. In fact, Huncraft actually doesn't fully grasp the Starcraft lore, and at one point it refers to the setting being in the Guild Galaxy. Like, come on, it's not like Terrans or even Protoss have the tech that they can just travel between galaxies as if it was nothing. Hell, I remember how it was a big potential plot hole in Starcraft 2 Heart of the Swarm, that Kerrigan could just get to Zeros, which is in another sector, some other side of the Milky Way galaxy. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, so this is like a dual translation error. In the Hungarian translation, the word Templar in all of its forms have been translated as pop, meaning priest. However, this is of course wrong, as a Templar is more of a crusader or paladin, more like a holy warrior. And since the new unit was called Psi-Pop in Hungarian, it was translated back too accurately as Psi Priest. Anyways, it should actually be Psi Templar. I'm not exactly sure what the role of the Psi Templar should be. It's basically got a weaker but faster version of the Archon attack. It cannot attack air, but it got the restoration skill of the Terra Medic, and is in fact a detector. I guess it's like a support range unit, kinda like the Adept in Starcraft 2, but without an extra cool ability. Really not sure. Love its Hungarian codes though. As a kid I kept using it in conversations. As for the Terran Phantom, you won't see it until like one of the last Terran missions. First as an enemy, then later something you can build. So I guess it makes sense, as it is quite OP. Similar to the design of the Scantalisk, Phantom is the anti-ground specialist counterpart to the Valkyrie. Same attack, just ground, though for some reason it also got a weak anti-air attack too, in the form of the same attack as the Protoss Interceptors. This one's a beast, and at the same time it is also basically the Banshee from Starcraft 2, except without the cloak and without it being balanced. It's actually interesting how both unofficial and official unit took from the Raid as the naming scheme. Phantom, Banshee, makes sense. When it comes to the mission variety, it's as varied as Starcraft 1 can get. There are some skirmishes and time missions. There are complex commando missions that are quite the highlights actually. And there are missions where you get the opportunity to mix and match the sides, even one with a rare Reserve Protoss team up. When it comes to the story, not sure how to put it. It's not exactly bad at all, but feels like it's retreading a few things, while also being somewhat oblivious of its own settings lore, as mentioned before. I don't want to spoil too much, even if it's really odd work at this point, but let's just say that if Starcraft 2 had way too much plot armor for beloved characters, Huncraft got the opposite, almost none at all. So it does end on a interesting note where Starcraft 2 wouldn't work at all as a sequel. Though, if I really think about it and twist things a bit, maybe Huncraft can tie into Starcraft 2 by saying that it's in the timeline that was shown in Zero Two's vision in Wings of Liberty. There's even a decent enough final cutscene as well, which, well, again, got problems, especially with the action scenes being really lame and slow. But still, I feel it got a few memorable moments, at least for the child that was me when I first played it. When it comes to the English translation, it's interesting. Often it's very accurate, and sometimes it goes the extra mile in trying to better tie the expansion story into the lore. However, oftentimes it's also a bit too dry, not able to translate the verbal jokes and style of the conversations, which is often very flippant in the original language.
Hé, ti! Mit akarsz? Engedj tovább!
Az azonosító nélkül soha nem jutok be a kompjúterterembe, ha azt keresitek.
Izgatottan várom azt a kódot. Mondd csak el szépen!
Azt leshetitek.
A fene! Valahogy meg kell tudnunk az azonosítót. Kövessük!
But overall, I say it's good enough to get what's going on. Well, I think that's mostly it. I can really mostly talk about the campaign, while also not wanting to spoil everything. I cannot really talk about the multiplayer because I never played it. But where's the creators now? Huncraft Interactive. Well, after this, they produced a full Hungarian translation with similar high production values for Warcraft 3 and its expansion, The Frozen Throne. Definitely helped me a lot to get into the Warcraft lore, if I did start with Warcraft 2 when I didn't know a lick of English yet. And after that, they just disappeared. Which is kind of sad, and unfortunately not unheard of in this country. There was like Black Hole, developers of Armies of Exigo and Heroes of Might and Magic 6. There was Eidos Hungary, or the legendary digital reality creators of Imperium Galactica, Hegemonia, or Cinemora. Did you know that Echo the Dolphin, yes, that one that caused nightmares for all the kids, it was made by a Hungarian team? Did you know that? They are all gone now. All of them, lost in this creative black hole of a country that just eats up all new ideas or hope for a better future. You know, I did mention Warcraft 2. Did you know there was a similar project for Warcraft 2? Made by fans in the neighboring Ukraine. It wasn't just an expansion actually, but a full remake called Warcraft 2000. It also featured janky amateur cutscenes and weird-ass lore about apparently the whole game took place on Earth and aliens came to give nukes to the Orcish horde. What the actual hell? The people who made this, similarly to Huncraft Interactive, have contacted Blizzard to make it an official thing, maybe work on Warcraft 3, and they were rejected just the same. Man, I wonder if those developers are still around. Let's see, Warcraft 2000, Nuclear Epidemic, blah blah blah, unlicensed, blah blah blah, created by Ukrainian game studio GSC Game World. What? The people behind the Stalker series? What? I can't believe it. How? How? Okay, yeah. Anyways, if you want to check out Huncraft. You can do so from the link in the description, okay? Well, wow, the last video was some time ago, huh? This was a long way coming, really. Since last time, actually, by the way, EMC Squad's episode 5 came out. I do recommend it for everyone. As for what's next for me, honestly, not sure. I become quite busy with things in real life, and though I also know working with the EMC guys on the last episode on the opposite side. This of course means that I have much less time to make videos, so really we'll see what exactly will happen. I did have some ideas, like different kind of unknown-ish mods from both on the RTS side, on the FPS side, maybe even dive into fan-made Sonic games, of all things. There are so many, actually. There are so many really good ones. We will see. Anyways, do check out AMC Squad episode 5. Oh, and Huncraft too if you are interested. I'd see you later.